Good morning, grandkids. I'm going to read you some more of my story that I'm writing from in a land far, far away, about Dorkly, the young wizard. This is chapter 4. Dorkly held his parchment down and read it for the second time. He looked up slowly, wondering if this would be the kind of enchanted thing that the king had requested. Looked good to him. He jumped up and hurried over to the bookshelf with far too much clutter on its shelves and the floor beneath, he said to himself, stooping down and picking up the delicately wrapped puffball and putting it back on a shelf. He then searched for 3 things. He wanted an eye of an eagle. They were very sharp-sighted and far-sighted. That would be quite necessary for the king. He also selected an antenna from an ant. This would carry the enchantment to its quarry undetected. These 2 things might do the trick. No, he thought, let's add a small piece of crystal which will reflect the captured thoughts and any hidden objects in clothing back to the caster, in this case, the king. Dorkly grinned and snatched these items from the shelves, knocking a few things to the floor, and hurried over to another table where he had a stone bowl and a pestle. Also a small vial of oil. He put the ingredients into the mixing bowl, picked up the pestle. He started pounding and mixing the ingredients. Softly he started chanting words that he had read from that old scroll of parchment. Over and over he chanted as he ground and mixed. He stopped for only a moment to add 1 small drop of the oil to bind it. Then he started the grinding and mixing and enchanting, his voice getting louder until he saw a mist rising up from the bowl and hover there, then slowly fall back down into the bowl. He found a small, slender glass vial and pulled out the stopper, which had a slender glass tube attached to it. He poured the enchanted elixir into it and restoppered it. The king could now carry that with him or keep it in his chamber until needed. 1 drop would last about 30 minutes, dabbed onto the front of his special belt buckle. He sat there a minute, looking at his work, hoping this would be what the king wanted and would work. He snatched up the belt and the vial of the new potion, picking up stuff off the floor and throwing it back on a shelf, and hurried upstairs. He was excited because when he got back, he was going to make himself some of this, secretly, of course. The king, after taking care of the last villager in his courtroom, who had wanted him to make a shopper pay him what he owed him, stepped down from his throne. He looked weary, but was thinking worriedly about his twin sons and his daughter Othello. His one son's problem, whatever it was, would have to wait. He walked along, his hands clasped behind his back. He was wearing a light blue robe, which was cinched in at the waist with a golden cord. The cord was knotted, hung halfway down his robes, and the ends were strung with multicolored beads, which gently clicked and clacked together as he walked. He had sandals on his feet, which were slowly traveling the dark blue carpet of the hallway. His blonde hair was inching closer to his shoulders. He needed to get the barber over here, he was thinking. to get it cut. He'd try to remember to call for him later today. He walked along, continuing to think of things that he needed to tend to, rather than think about his son. But he finally shook his head and thought of his son anyway. He had no idea what was going on in that young man's head. He'd be glad when he got his hands on that potion Dorkly was mixing him. He stopped the guard in passing, told him to go to Wizard Dorkly's chambers and ask him if he was finished with the project he was working on. The guard snapped his salute and took off. The king's thoughts then turned to his daughter again. He hadn't seen her in a few days, and decided that tomorrow he would summon her to his suite for tea and catch up on what she might be doing. That put him in a better mood, and he stepped out more sprightly with a smile on his face. But then he stopped. My word, he thought, Othello is 24 years old, and I've been way too lax in trying to find her a husband. He looked around for another guard. Seeing General Bonester off in the distance, he signaled to him. Bonester hurried over to him with a snappy salute. The guard's first name was Bonester, and since he liked the ladies way too much, you can imagine what most people called him. The king said, "You are the one over all the guards here, aren't you, Bonester?" "Yes, sir, that I am," he said, with a stern look on his face. "What do you need of me, my king?" Conley said, "This may be beneath your station, and I see no other guards around, but it is a delicate matter, and I think I would prefer it to be you to handle it for me." "Anything you ask, my lord, of course," he said. "What would you have me to do?" "I would like for you to go about the few villages and see if you can find any man who could qualify for becoming a husband for my daughter. I know this may take some time, but don't make it too long. Let me know when you are back with someone, and we will meet in the throne room." "This may take 2 or 3 days, sire. Are you looking for anyone in particular?" No, I need to get my daughter married off in this lifetime. I've put this off way too long," the king exclaimed. "I'll see to it immediately, my king," and he snapped a salute and hurried off. "Well," the king thought to himself, "seems like I've made a few decisions today and got a couple of ideas going." He was feeling better about a few things and was glad to turn toward his sitting room. He saw Dorkly coming his way and waved his hand at him in a summons to follow him into the room. They sat down, though Dorkly could hardly sit still, and Conley snapped his fingers at a servant hovering nearby. The servant rushed forward with a slight bow, inquiring what the king wished to have. "Bring us some bottles of mead, and then you may retire, as I won't be needing you or anything else." "Yes, my lord," and he hurried away. Conley looked at Dorkly and asked in a lowered voice, "Have you brought me something useful?" "Oh, yes," Dorkly replied with excitement in his voice. He explained what he had made and how it would work. "Excellent, excellent." The king was getting excited now. "When you put it on, speak your son's name to yourself, and the enchantment will reach out to him, and you will hear his thoughts and see whatever he might be carrying hidden away." The servant returned and set drinks and glasses on the table near the king, and then departed, leaving the two alone. Now Dorkly gave the belt to his king, who wrapped it around his waist and sat there. "I don't feel anything," he said. "You're not supposed to feel anything," laughed Dorkly. Be somewhere in front of the person, your son, then think his name. Then is when you'll feel something in your head. Thoughts, sights. Go ahead, try it. Look at me. But not too long, please, Dorkly said with a slight frown and a wink. The king looked at him and thought, Dorkly, and almost jumped out of his chair. He turned aside immediately and started laughing. Young wizard, you are quite a character. And he chuckled as he unwrapped the belt. Dorkly started to get a little flustered and asked, What did you see? Not telling, the king said with a grin. Come on, what? Dorkly's voice rose. Nope, the king smiled. Dorkly sat there, staring at Conley, thinking what could have been the worst thing that he could have seen? The last girl I was with? No, I'll bet he saw what I plan to do with the potion when I make some for myself. He sort of slumped in his chair, a worried look on his face. The king finally took pity on him, felt like he'd teased him long enough. Nothing bad, Dorkly. Just wanted to have some fun with you. I must say, though, you sure like the ladies. You're about as bad as that General Bonester. Then he laughed. Get on with you now. I've got to plan some luncheons and dinners with my children. And he got up and started out of the room. Dorkly got up slowly. His head hung low, sort of slinked out of the room behind the king. And that's all for today. So I will see you again when I'm ready to read the next chapter. Next Friday, probably. So I will see you all then. Goodbye, grandkids.